Yes, I can see it.
It's the rising sun, as you see.
Ah, Eastern Command. Okay.
India has a single time zone.
Hmm.
But really speaking, if you're in Delhi at 6 in the morning,
Hmm.
7 in the morning when the sun is rising,
Hmm. Hmm.
in the Eastern Command, if you go there, the
Hmm.
sun is already risen because they're 1 hour ahead.
Right.
So everybody starts very early over there.
Ah.
If Delhi starts working at 9 or 9:30 in the morning, we, according to Indian Standard Time, already at office at 8 o'clock.
Right, right,
Because then the night comes much faster.
right.
It's well, you travel to these eastern parts. Many North Indians don't realize the size of India beyond Bengal, beyond West Bengal. It's a huge area. Assam and all those. There are 9 states: Sikkim and Arunachal, Nagaland, Mizoram, Tripura. You see, Assam itself, Eastern Bihar, and there's a bit of Nepal border there. It's a fascinating country. God has been very great to India, I think, very lucky nation to have such a variety of terrain. And we in the military are very happy with that because we get training in the deserts of Rajasthan on the one side, in the deep jungles of the northeast, and the mountainous regions of the northeast, which are completely different types of battle. And we have high altitudes in Sikkim and high altitudes in Arunachal and high altitudes in Ladakh. So we got all types of terrain. Anyway, Nivedita, last time we were talking about the visit of K.C. Pant, the Minister of Defense. I told you that I collared him at the airport. He didn't want to see me because he was on an election visit. Nonetheless, I put across 2 points to him. Number one, that we do not want interference of the police and the Home Ministry into the Assam riots. And I told you last time that his father, Govind Wallabh Pant, a very great man indeed, who was the Home Minister of India during the Nehru administration, made sure that when the British officers left who were looking after the Assam rifles, Indian Army officers took over, was not given to the police. So despite my then Chief General Sundarji trying to hand this over to the Home Ministry, I think his motivation was that there was a lot of correspondence on the subject and he wanted to get rid of the correspondence. And secondly, he himself has never served beyond Sikkim, the southern part of Sikkim. He hasn't been to the north. He doesn't understand the situation there. And therefore, to him, it's just a paramilitary force, let it go to wherever it goes. But I must tell you that right since 1965, when General Jain Chaudhary raised the BSF, and I was on his staff, I was concerned that things that the military officers should look after be handed over to the police. Because what happens is that the police is not able to function independently, as I explained earlier, because they have to count out of the civilian master, the MLAs and the MPs and so on. Their promotions and their postings depend on that. So with the result, we do not get from them the concerted independence of action that is necessary without a political stance to it. So in the military, we are able to function because we have an army chief and we only obey his orders. So if the government has to say anything to us, it has to go through the army chief and he may or may not agree. And with the result, we have independence of action. And we're as much concerned with the Constitution of India as anybody else. So I was concerned that 22 battalions of the Assam Rifles under my command in the Eastern Army were being proposed to be handed over to the police. I never accepted it. They were operationally under my command. And I said that to the defense minister. He agreed with me. The second point that I raised with him is the question of the chief and the Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi and the China Study Group, which the Prime Minister chaired, was wanting us to withdraw from the northeastern borders beyond the limit of patrolling that they had laid down, because the Chinese were advancing south, and I explained that to you last time. So I told him, I said, you chaps in the politics have to wake up. You have to either defend your country wholeheartedly. If you are afraid of war, why aren't the Chinese afraid of war? Why aren't the Pakistanis afraid of war? War cuts badly on both sides. So I said, you've got to be bold enough to face people who are giving you these pinpricks, and you every time accept the pinprick. In fact, even our reputation amongst the Americans and the British, since we were in conversation with many of the officials, was that India is a pincushion. You keep poking it, it accepts. Mahatma Gandhi's non-violence. That's no way of a country functioning. Anyway, that depends on the type of government you have. As I told you once, many people may not agree with me, but the Congress party are English men in Indian skin. And they want to rule the way the British rule, like masters. It doesn't work that way. As luck would have it, India has got a present government, which are Indian men in Indian skin. And therefore, they look at problems from a nationalistic point of view rather than a Western point. Anyway, so KC Pant accepted all this because he wanted to get rid of me. He had other work to do for his election. He nodded his head in the right direction, and I went away quite satisfied. Now, carrying on with the problem on the Sumrodong-Chu valleys of Kameng Frontier Division at a height of some 11,000 feet, where the Chinese had occupied what we thought was an area across, southwards of the McMahon line. And now I agree that their perception of the border is different to ours. And now that's a matter of diplomacy. Diplomacy cuts both ways. Diplomacy has to be done both by China and by India. I can't say India is at fault or that China is at fault. Talks had started from 1994 or thereabout. By that time I retired. And even today, people say, why don't you sit down and talk and decide where your border is? It has to be a little give and take on both sides. But if you stick to your own viewpoint, whether you're a Chinese or an Indian, and you do not talk, then there is conflict. You've got a 4,000-kilometer northern border with no demarcation. We see where that is. Perhaps, a thought came to my mind, perhaps neither China nor India want to settle this issue. Perhaps they require a little conflict. Because to control your own country, if there's a little conflict on your borders, it's easier than if it's all peace and quiet. And you must have seen for yourself in your experience. Everybody's life has a lot of conflict. I also say that if there was no conflict, it would be a very boring life, wouldn't it? Secondly, from India's point of view, I told you once earlier that the fact that you have got pressure on your northern border and your western border from two neighbors is the one that keeps you alert. It keeps you trying to get your economy better so that you can have a strong military. A strong military cannot be there unless there's a strong economy and unless there is a political will. So now what we require is political will, a very good economy, then you can have a good military for your defense. We don't want to occupy other people's territories, but we have no intention of allowing anybody else to occupy any part of our territory. It's simple as that. All right. So now KC Pant and I had got on net, and I felt good about that because then I was not happy with the way Army headquarters was trying to control us in Eastern Army in a sort of a, shall I call it a frightened manner? I told you Rajiv Gandhi, the Prime Minister, visited Tawang, and one of the Jawans asked him, "Sir, are you afraid? क्या डर लगता है?" And the Jawan said, "Why don't you give us the order? You want us to go into Lhasa and do something to the Chinese? We do it." All right. And so I also told you that the politicians are very respectful of our Jawans, our NCOs, JCOs, and junior officers. There are too many generals knocking around in army headquarters and people get used to their sight. So nobody wants to listen to what they say. That's the luck of the draw. Anyway, continuing with that little action that was going on in the northeast border with government of India insisting we withdraw and we insisting that we will not, I got the impression that this may come into larger conflict. So I was concerned about our lines of communication. You'd appreciate that if you're fighting on a front, there are certain lines of communication where the logistics of the military has to be able to reach the frontline troops. That means ammunition, weapons, equipment, replacement of ammunition and weapons and equipment as you finish them, replacement of casualties if the men get killed or are evacuated because of injury. All this requires a series of transport movements from your main base where all the stuff is lying, at the back, to the frontline troops. Now, if you look at the map of India and this little chicken neck area which I told you about, where the boundary of Nepal and Bangladesh gives us an area of hardly 25, 30 kilometers wide, North Bengal, which connects us to Assam. So it's called the chicken neck because you can catch that neck and throttle. So if the Chinese wanted to do that, we had to make plans to resist. We got a whole corps of infantry there. And when I was army commander, the man commanding this corps was Lieutenant General Bulbul Barar, who was the same gentleman who, when as a major general and a divisional commander of 9th Division, had, on orders of General Sultanji, who was then Western Army commander, attacked the Golden Temple. He's a very good officer, but he was under threat because, the Sikh terrorists were after his blood. So he had a lot of protection and all that sort of thing. And he was commanding this corps. And since he was a very competent officer, we were quite confident that he will do the job as we request. So when I was an army commander, I visited him and examined all these areas. And I was concerned that from Guwahati, which is, as you know, the capital of Assam, where our main bases were, if you have to go to Sumrodongchu, where the action was taking place in the Kameng Frontier Division of what is now Arunachal, it's about 300 kilometers or 400 kilometers, a difficult road. You cross a huge area called the Sela Pass, which goes up to about 14,500 feet. And you go down from there to a river. You cross that river, then you come up to Tawang, which is the capital of that region, and there's a big monastery there. One of the ancient Dalai Lamas apparently was born of it. And Tawang Monastery, further up, the terrain goes up to the high altitude area, and we have ridge lines there held. North of Tawang is a place called Bumla. It's called the Bumla Pass. It's about 15,000 feet. And the range of hills goes westwards and eastwards. And on the west, there was a Langrola Ridge, as it is known as. And beyond the Langrola Ridge was this area of McMahon Line, which Chinese had entered in. So according to our view, they had entered south of the so-called McMahon Line as marked on our maps. They claim that our maps are wrong, and even if you agree with the McMahon Line, it should be 20 kilometers further south, and you Indians have made it 20 kilometers further north. That's the way the wind blows as far as aggressive neighbors are concerned. So we said, that's all right, but at such time as it is on our maps, we are not parting from this stand. Since I was concerned about the line of communication from Guwahati to there, I estimated that we would require about 10 battalions of armed troops to protect this line of communication in case the Chinese use parachutists and other things to land in the chicken egg. Now, because of this, I didn't have the troops. Now, I knew that Assam had about 15 battalions of armed police. So I worked out that perhaps about 10 battalions of that armed police came under my control. Then I would be able to protect this line of communication. So we contacted the chief minister of Assam, who was Prafulla Kumar Mahanta. I've spoken of this name before. He was a student leader. And much to the disgust of Indira Gandhi when she was prime minister, he won the election. He won the election on the premise that Assam is for Assamese and they must speak Assamese language. But we are being inundated by Bengalis. I hope you don't mind saying it, but that's what it is. We are being inundated by very clever Bengalis who are immigrating into our Assam, not only from Bengal, but from East Pakistan earlier and now Bangladesh, in thousands and lakhs. So what is happening is that they are occupying large empty areas in Assam, since it's like not very heavily populated compared to Bengal, or compared to East Bengal for that matter. And the German term, Hitler's term was Lebensraum. We need territory to keep our expanding population. So the people cross the border at liberty, because you can't control every inch of the border. And Indira Gandhi had allowed them to settle down in Assam, create villages overnight out of bamboo, and provided the vote for Congress party, she would allow them to stay. But if they did not vote for Congress party, then she'd get the police to throw them out. So she even changed some of the laws of India in regard to aliens who come into the country. She made a separate addendum to that law, that law does not apply to Assam. So that Bengali populations who came in from East Pakistan or Bangladesh into this area, and from Bengal itself, to occupy large tracts of land which were vacant, create villages overnight, and vote Congress. So now Prafulla Kumar Mahanta, when he was standing for his election as a student, he said, this has to be resisted by Assamese. Otherwise, we Assamese will lose out on our culture and we'll all become Bengalis. So naturally, he got the maximum votes and he became chief minister. A very young man. He was only about 32 years old. I wanted to meet him. So I sent word that, look, I'd like to meet you. So he fixed an appointment for meeting in Guwahati on a certain day. And I ended up by air. And when I went there, I had two staff officers with me while I was ready to meet them. And in front of me, I was confronted by not only Chief Minister Prafulla Kumar Mahanta, but by about 10 of his ministers. The whole phalanx of Assamese in front of me, and I was a single person. So I spoke in English, and I said, you've got 20 battalions of armed police, I want 10. You hand them over to me, I want to protect the line of communication from this Guwahati to Kemang Frontier Division in the north of Arunachal. So he knew how to speak English, but he pretended not to. So he spoke in Assamese. And he had one minister who could interpret him in English. And that gentleman informed me that, look, the chief minister doesn't understand nor speak English. Therefore, I am translating what you've said to him in Assamese. Then we will confer among ourselves. And then we'll answer you in English. So we waited while this mumbo jumbo went on, consulting among themselves in Assamese. Then eventually, after the chief minister had briefed the spokesman of his, spokesman said that, General, why do you want to control our 10 battalions and we can control them ourselves and do your work for you? So I said, will you be able to produce 10 battalions of armed police, we've got so much problems in Assam itself. In Assam, there was the ULFA, United Assamese Liberation Front, or whatever it is, whose leaders were trying to overthrow the regular elected government and sort of rule through terrorism. And they were shooting up people here and there. And when the Assamese police or the army used to chase them, they used to run into earlier East Pakistan and then later into Bangladesh, where they got succor. And since Begum Zia was chief minister of, or rather the prime minister of East Pakistan and later Bangladesh, she was not very happy with India, so she was more friendly with the Pakistan. So under the circumstances, she gave full succor to these underground. In fact, encouraged them, gave them weapons, equipment, and money to create more trouble in Assam. So I said, your police is very busy with that. Then there's a problem between the Nagaland border and the Assamese border. There's a problem between the Mizoram border and the Assamese. And since Arunachal had been created, there's certain areas of problem between Arunachal border and the Assamese border. Now, when the British were here, all these so-called states, like Arunachal, Nagaland, Mizoram, and Tripura, were all under Assam. It was just one state. But when India became independent in due course of time, because of the agitation of various areas, these separate states had been created. So Arunachal was a separate state, Meghalaya was a separate state, Nagaland became a separate state, and later Mizoram became a separate state. So Assam was cut down to almost half its size. And so in all its borders with these troubles, Assam police was being employed. So I said, so how do you control these guys? I got a very interesting answer, Nivedita, which I must share with you. Chief Minister Prafulla Kumar Mahanta said that, General, you got it all wrong. We have our problems. We are fighting with the Nagas and we are fighting with the various other districts in our border problems, and our police is involved. But basically, we're all Indians, and our fights are political fights. Should any Chinese come here, by any means, either by parachuting or by coming down through the mountains, all these Assamese will get together, including the terrorist organizations like ULFA and so on. There is a borderland terrorist organization, because we are not accepting anybody from outside coming. We've got our internal problems, then we'll keep fighting each other. But if somebody from outside comes, we will all join together and finish that guy first. I said, that's very good to hear. So how do you protect my line of communication? He says, your line of communications are in Assam, going into Arunachal. And it's part of Indian territory. Therefore, if any Chinese parachute or something land here, we'll kill them all. You don't have to bother about that. We'll bury the hatchet among ourselves. Every Chinese will be murdered the moment he lands. So I'm very happy to hear that. He says, we will look after your line of communication. It's up to us, and you will not find us lacking. We will make sure that all your transports, hundreds and hundreds of trucks and things which go on our road from Guwahati to the Kameng Frontier Division of Arunachal, will be fully secure and looked after by us. And for that matter, if your transportation system or something becomes less than what we want, we'll give you transporters. But to leave that to us, we will do the needful to make sure that whatever you want on the front is there for you. That was very hard to. I must say that once earlier, when I was discussing the 1962 war with you, and I was in Staff College in Wellington in South India, Nilgiri Hills, I told you that Srupi and I had gone to Kunur for some shopping on a Sunday in my car, and I found those long lines of Tamil women handing over jewelry to the post office. Got a little post office chit with this postage stamp and this initials of the postmaster say so many tolas of gold have been received. And those women parted with literally their life savings. Because some chap called Nehru, whom he didn't, who's some sort of a boss, they didn't know who he was, said that this India is in danger. And I raised a question to you also. Why is India one country? If you travel any few kilometers in India, the culture and the language and the dialect changes. Yet, when the nation, as ordained, is in danger, all these guys get together no matter what caste or creed they belong. From a military point of view, that's very hard. I do believe, and I told many nations, including Argentina, that unless the military is loved by its people, civilians, military cannot function. Therefore, they must never raise their weapons against civilians of their own country. They must serve the civilian no matter what the politics. And this principle, as long as we maintain, there'll be a lot of love and respect for the military. So I noticed that and I was very happy to see that. So that's one incident I wanted to share. Uh, Politics in India is very nasty and we keep quarreling amongst ourselves. But as I told you, it's only skin deep. The nation isn't a problem. Everybody buries the hatchet. All right. Now that is one incident that took place. And as you know, we confronted the Chinese and came to stalemate. I had positioned our troops in such a way, and we just recently purchased a new Bofors gun from Sweden. And I had been sent two of these guns to, when I was in Sikkim as a Major General, two of these guns for trial. And when this gun was accepted, we had about a regiment of Bofors guns. And I moved this regiment up into Tawau. They've got a very long range. And we had surrounded the Chinese entry. It's about a company's worth. We had troops ready to outflank them by entering Chinese territory and cutting off the passes at the rear of this ingress. And the result was that we told that Chinese commander that, look here, if you don't settle down and understand that you cannot advance any further here, we'll wipe you out. And we will not let you withdraw from this valley because we are going to occupy the area behind you, which is still in the McMahon line, as I suggested, the Thagla Ridge. And we have got guns now, the Bofors, which have got a high altitude, high range of fire. And we can kill a lot of you without a single Indian soldier getting killed. And that will give a very bad black face, kala move to the Chinese. You must understand the philosophy behind this. If you are a big, strong person and a bully, and you're thrashing everybody around, and a little chap comes and confronts you, if he leads a hard punch to your face and makes your nose bleed, you get what is known as kala muh, blackface. This had already happened to the Chinese earlier. I explained that in 1977 or thereabout, when I was in Military Operations Directorate, in 1980, you remember the Chinese had attacked Vietnam from the north. And the Vietnamese Vo Chan Giap, who was the hero of defeated the French division in Dien Bien Phu. If you remember your history, in the middle 50s and middle 60s, even the Americans ran away from Vietnam. The man behind this is Vo Bien Giap. It's a small man, about 4'9". And when he came to our military operations directorate, I looked at him, a meek individual, so respectful to everybody who talked to him, with his head hanged down, knees together. He's a great hero who defeated the Chinese attack when he was commander-in-chief there under Ho Chi Minh. He defeated the Chinese attack because he had defenses something like 20, 30 kilometers in depth, mountainous areas north of Vietnam. And the Chinese division got a very big black face. They had to withdraw despite being such a massive power. What does that mean? That if you're a large power and you fail in military operations against a small, puny little state, that does a lot of damage to your reputation all over the world. Now, if you look at the Ukraine war, that is what is happening to Russia. You've got the small state called Ukraine, no matter he's got all the aid and money and weapons from NATO and from the US. But the men fighting are the Ukrainians. And despite being beaten up, despite their families having been destroyed, run away, and their cities destroyed, they are not backing down. The war continues. So even if Putin wants to stop the war, it's not going to stop till they get their territory back. Now that's an interesting situation. It shows what happens when a large state tries to have military operations overconfident about their strength and they get a bloody nose. They're not defeated, but their nose is bleeding. See? So we told these chaps in China also that you come on, get a black face, and your Deng Xiaoping, who's your president, will hang his head in shame. Then we kill every one of you without a single Indian. So back off. And so they backed off. Became a bit of a stalemate. A few years later, it was peace and quiet, and they withdrew and we withdrew. That is the incident of Samrodong Chu. By the way, Chu in Tibetan language is a stream or a river. Now, while I was Eastern Army commander, it's a fabulous command. I did hardly 10 months and they kicked me upstairs and made me the chief. But I would have loved to stay for a few years more. It's such a delight to be posted in Calcutta and such a delight to have troops in Bengal and Assam and all the northeastern states because they love the military. Ever since the war against East Pakistan in 1971, when we gave a thorough defeat to Pakistan and captured 93,000 prisoners, the people of Calcutta are very taken up with the military. Let me explain something to you. You know how full of transport Charangi is. You can't move. If you have a staff car with a single star on it and a flag, the police of Calcutta will stop all traffic to get that guy forward, wherever he's going. So if you have to go from the cantonment area to, let us say, Howrah, cross the bridge in the Hooghly, it's a difficult route. Because those days, the new bridge had not been made. Now you've got a new bridge there. So if in the middle of the night that distance would be done in 15 minutes, if you went during traffic hours in the daytime, it would take you 45 minutes to an hour. If you have to plan to catch a train, it takes a whole hour ahead you have to leave. And if you're in a lineup of cars and you're halted, and the police constable on duty sees a staff car with a flag flying, he blows his whistle 3 or 4 times, beckon you forward, take you on the wrong side of the road, that's the right of the road, on the pavement, and let you go ahead, so that you still did movement to Howrah within 15 or 20 minutes. Amazing. Jyoti Bosu was the communist chief minister, and he could visit us quite often. He did it. You know, there was a big fire in New Market, for instance, and he wanted to make shops on the Medan side of Charangi. Now, the Medan is under military control. Ever since the British built Fort William, they laid down a rule that the guns of Fort William, as per the range, all that area is under army control. Now, you know, in our country, even when it became independent, many of the laws that the British laid down are still there and you haven't changed the laws. So when Jyoti Bosu wanted to come across the Charangi into the Medan area to build temporary shops for the new market, which had burnt, We confronted him with troops. He said, "You can't do it. It's military land." So he spoke to me. He said, "Look, how do I do this?" I said, "You don't. I'm not letting you come into the Maidan." And Maidan, as you know, is the lungs of Calcutta. That's where people breathe. There is a racetrack, which is on army land, and we have permitted the race horses to run because we like horses and we like races. And number two, there are huge areas, the Victoria Memorial and all that is there, but huge Maidans, golf courses functioning, civilian golf course, army golf course, and all that around Fort William in the range of the guns. So then Jyoti Bosu appealed to the Home Minister to say that please tell these army chaps to lay off because New Market is burnt and we have to have these shops temporarily built somewhere to be reconstruct the New Market. So then Home Ministry spoke to Defense Ministry, they spoke to the chief, and they spoke to me. I said, all right, on the condition that once the New Market has really been renovated, then these temporary constructions will be removed from the lawn, from the Maidan. And with that premise and assurance from the Bengal government, we allowed. And sure enough, after the New Market was constructed, this thing was removed. So just shows to you that at least we've got a breathing area in Calcutta, thanks to the military presence, but there's a very good relation between the civil government and us. A number of things used to happen there. For instance, I knew a lot of people in Toliganj Club. There was a English couple settled there for many years. The name is slipping my tongue at the moment. I may remember it after a little while. And he was on the board of the Graham schools in Kalimpong. You know where Kalimpong is? If you're from North Bengal, if you go towards Sikkim, there's Darjeeling on the western side and Kalimpong on the eastern side. And then they bear on to Sikkimese territory. So in Kalimpong, the Graham schools were there. And what happened? The Nepalese leader called Subhash Ji Singh made an agitation in Darjeeling for Gurkha land. Gurkha land. Now, how did this come about? Since I was the army commander, we had to keep a very close watch on the politics that goes on in this country because the politics cause conflict. The conflict causes the army to come in. Right? Because the police is never functioning. So, Subhash Ghise said that we need Gurkha land because he encouraged by Indira the prime Congress government can come in. Now, as you know, Darjeeling and Kalimpong all come under Bengal, and so that was under. So this is creation of conflict within the state of West Bengal to create problems for the chief minister there, and hopefully in the election, if he fails in maintaining his Bengal state property or to control law and order, then he can be removed and the administration can be handed over to an administrator and then elections held